sometime in the early 2000s. A surprising story of a certain John Gotti's welfare in prison came up during a RICO trial for the Aryan Brotherhood. The Aryan Brotherhood, founded in 1964 at California's San Quentin Prison, was a menace countrywide. And in 2002, AB leadership was the target of one of the largest capital punishment cases in U.S. history. The most detailed account of the incident involving Gotti came to light on a website about organized crime. As the story goes, after a denigrating racial comment, John Gotti, once America's top mobster, suffered a brutal beating at the hands of a black inmate. The story was something Gotti's lawyer denied and the prison refused to comment on entirely. Many were left to wonder how such a thing could happen to John Gotti himself, America's least fuck-wittable criminal just years prior. At the trial, it also came to light that Gotti may have paid AB $500,000 to kill the black inmate, Walter Johnson. But after years of suspense at the prison, AB never went through with the hit. John Gotti died of cancer, and Walter Johnson got away unscathed. On paper, John Joseph Gotti Jr. was a plumbing supply salesman, but he was really a millionaire mobster in New York's underworld. After spending his younger years working his way up the Gambino ranks, Gotti reached capo status in the family. He was held in high regard as an earner, credit to various hustles and outright heists, like the Lufthansa heist in 1978, portrayed in the Goodfellas movie, the largest unrecovered cash robbery in history. In 1985, Gotti and his crew would be charged with drug dealing, a cardinal sin in the mafia, and something that stood to get him killed and undo all the work he'd put in for years. So instead, Gotti plotted the murder of his boss, Paul Castellano. On a December 1985 day in Midtown Manhattan, Paul Castellano was publicly gunned down right after stepping out of his limousine. Gotti sat in his car a few feet away, notoriously drove over to view the dead bodies moments after. Gotti became the new boss, and his brashness, $1,000 suits, and media antics quickly made him one of the most famous mob bosses since Al Capone and Lucky Luciano, even earning him the nickname the Dapper Don. But Gotti became the boss at the worst time possible to be a mobster in New York. In the 80s, the RICO law and a determined effort led by Rudy Giuliani took out the commission, the leaders of New York's historic five families. And in Gotti's case, after years of incredibly heavy surveillance and countless hours worth of wiretaps, the authorities gathered enough evidence to arrest him. A huge bust and a pivotal moment in the decline of a century of Cosa Nostra tyranny in New York. In another historic turn, Gotti's underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano, turned state evidence after he was betrayed by Gotti, the highest-ranking mafia member to do so at the time. Gotti would be convicted on every single charge and sentenced to life in 1992. The life and times of John Gotti make for a crazy storyline, and today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends, is just as engaging. Raid Shadow Legends is an immersive online experience with everything you'd expect from a brand new RPG title. It's one of the biggest mobile role-playing games of 2023, and it's totally free. Currently, Raid has millions of users, and it's one of the most impressive games in its class with detailed models, environments, and smooth 60 frames per second animations. There's plenty of reasons to give Raid a try, and now I will share with you my personal 3 ones. The first one is, the dungeon bosses have some ridiculous skills of their own, and figuring out the perfect party and strategy to beat them is really engaging. The second one is, all the champions in the game can be customized with unique gear that changes your strategic buffs and abilities, and player versus player battles are tons of fun as well. What's more, Raid Call of the Arbiter is in full swing now. To celebrate this epic limited series, Raid's adding some of the new characters from the series as champions you can play with in the game. The first one is Artak, a mighty orc warlord. Artak is going to be available to everyone for free. All you have to do is just log into Raid for 7 days between now and July 24th. All this exciting stuff and more are coming to Raid. Use my link description or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses. Bonuses like an epic champion Talia from the Sacred Order faction and other useful things like energy refills, skill tone, and XP boosters, and 200,000 silver. Once you're in and crushing your enemies, come find me under the name TH_22. And if you're fast enough, you can join my clan. So, just hit my link in the description, and I'll see you on the battlefield. USP Marion was built in 1963 as a replacement for Alcatraz. It was built to harbor 500 of America's worst convicts. And by the 90s, it was extremely violent, racial, and riddled with gangs. Within days of his sentencing, Gotti arrived at USP Marion. His arrival brought every single inmate out that day. They all pledged allegiance and assistance to him, and he was a prison celebrity from the jump. Perks of being a mafia folk hero, a title that would shield him from much of the violence and harm that came a newbie's way at Marion. His new home, a tiny 6x8 foot cell, consisted of a metal bed with a thin mattress, a small wash basin, 13-inch black and white TV set, and a small hot plate. He'd spend 21 hours of each day locked in there, mostly alone. From early in his stint, he'd be seen having lunch with gang leaders like Barry Mills, the Aryan Brotherhood boss. Gotti would offer cash and his criminal business sense in exchange for protection from the Brotherhood. But by 1994, the promise of protection was gone. Mills ordered AB members to stop protecting Gotti because the mob leader hadn't followed through on a promise to help Mills find an attorney to appeal an old murder conviction of his. During his stay, Gotti was known for having an aura of power and untouchableness in the prison. He fully expected to be treated as royalty. But in prison, Gotti and the mafiosos simply didn't have any muscle or backup like on the streets. All they had was their money. Gotti was known to buy commissary for everyone in the prison to leverage his power, and it didn't take long before he felt like he didn't need the protection of the Aryan Brotherhood anymore. Walter Johnson was a bank robber from Philly serving a 10-year sentence for serial bank robbing. Johnson was incredibly strong, with an explosive temper, and was described as an overall lunatic. Marion correctional officers even once described Johnson as the most dangerous inmate they ever had come across. It would soon turn out that Walter Johnson was probably the only inmate not intimidated by Gotti either.
It's back in Marion, John Gotti's there. We had homies, they putting in a ticket. Everybody yelling through the bars because everybody's locked in the cells. You know, when someone's talking, you respect the person on the microphone is what we call it. So dude was putting a ticket, John Gotti's ticket, team getting ready to play for his first ticket. So he trying to hurry up and get his bet in before the game starts. Somebody else was already giving their bet. So John Gotti said, man, you hear me talking? Dude said, nah, I'm talking. John Gotti like, man, I don't care who talking. I'm John Gotti, take my bet. So the Muslim dude told John Gotti, yo, just wait your turn. You hear them talking? Speaking up, John Gotti's like, I don't care what you of course, now it's gonna be on. So the doors open. John Gotti got the ABs around him when he come out. They had John Gotti in the middle, so dude whooped him, but John Gotti fought back as a man. When the joint was over, John Gotti shook his hand and said, man, you got that, but I'm letting you know now, we're gonna have to fight every day.
Gotti was no stranger to prison, having been incarcerated prior, and he understood prison dynamics well. But this was years before he was a boss. Now, his new inflated ego possibly made him think he was untouchable even in the pen. Maintaining respect and avenging the slightest form of disrespect is crucial in the U.S. prison system. And racial insults warranted instant hands, so Johnson had a bone to pick with Gotti now. The next day, after the doors were opened up, Johnson, 20 years Gotti's junior, snuck up on him, punched him to the ground, and pummeled him, knowing full well exactly who he was attacking too. Allegedly, the entire incident was caught on camera. There's a tape of the entire incident, but it's never been released to the public. In the aftermath, Gotti was taken to the prison clinic, where the infamous photos of him were snapped. When questioned about his bruises, he stuck to his code and claimed he slipped and fell, nothing more. Gotti's attack was typical in Marion, where no one ever dared to snitch, not even with their dying breath. Gotti wasn't about to let Walter get away with it, so in days following the attack, he'd been seen having intense discussions with the AB. Gotti allegedly offered to pay to have Johnson killed, and Mills agreed to take the offer, the bounty standing at a rumored $500,000. Barry Mills himself was serving 4 consecutive life sentences and had little to lose. The method of the hit the AB settled on was a shooting. Mills allegedly wanted to show that the Aryan Brotherhood could get anyone, anywhere, and in any way they wanted. A message to the rest of the prison, considering the Mexican mafia also stood behind John Gotti as well. The AB needed to get to Johnson first before a non-member did the job and collected the bounty. The AB was in the midst of a race war with the DC blacks during all of this, giving even more significance to the hit on Johnson. According to prison reports, in '97, a bullet was slipped under Johnson's door to symbolize how he'd be killed. Johnson ended up being secluded, making it harder for the AB to get to him. In '99, the California AB ringleader, Ronnie Renegade Yandel, was set to attack Johnson, but that never happened either. Barry Mills allegedly told Yandel to abort the mission. It turned out that Yandel was up for parole soon and more useful to the gang from the outside. So despite living in constant paranoia after the assault on Gotti, Walter Johnson got away scot-free. Johnson was paroled in 2001 and ended up in DC. 4 weeks after his release, he tried to get onto a subway station by jumping over a turnstile. Marlon Moraes, a 33-year-old immigrant from Guatemala and a cop of only 1 year, responded to a call about a fare beater. When he got there, he got in a scuffle with Johnson, was disarmed and shot dead. 4 weeks later, after a massive manhunt, a frantic Johnson was busted in a stolen car in Philly. He allegedly beat up 3 cops and tried to take one of their guns before being apprehended. He wound up in the DC jail after the arrest, one of the most violent city jails in the country. Not long after, he was stabbed 40 times in the recreation area and hospitalized in serious condition. No one knew the reason for the attack, but vindication for the beating on Gotti was a plausible theory. It was also alleged that the attack was possibly ordered by the COs given Johnson had killed a cop. Johnson survived, and later got life without parole. He now resides at ADX Florence with Chapo and them. As for Gotti, not too long after his altercation with Johnson, he was diagnosed with throat cancer and spent the next few years moving between his jail cell at Marion and a prison hospital. He died in June of 2002, never having avenged the man who tainted his legacy.